All right, so let's get into the actual artifact perks themselves. So the first row, as normal, you've got your champion mods. We've got auto rifle barrier, whatever. Bow for barriers as well. We've got unstoppable scout rifle. We've got overload hand cannon, and we've got unstoppable fusion. So the unstoppable fusion, I'm actually pretty excited about. Obviously, fusion rifles in general are. I personally like fusion rifles in general. And then the interesting weapon that I'm gonna throw out there is Vex, because that's fusion rifle. Just saying. And again, with some other things in this artifact, that could also be interesting. So I'm very interested in Vex for sure. If you need unstops, give you some range, give you still a solid weapon on that. And of course, as normal, all of these weapons are going to give you that extra 25% damage whenever the overcharge modifier is active. It does say, just a quick note down here, that the overload machine gun and overload hand cannon is bugged. So at the very start of the season, that will be something that will not be giving us the 25% damage, and then the bow and unstoppable fusion will give the overcharge, but it's not in the description. So that's interesting, but I'm sure they'll fix that pretty quickly, hopefully, knock on wood. But just keep that in mind in case you're actively trying to use these for that 25% damage boost. Vex for unstop. Still don't have it. Well, I mean, even without Vex, other fusions are still going to be useful. Like anytime we have special weapons as champion stunning effects, that really opens up the sandbox pretty significantly to me in terms of being able to both deal with multiple champion types without having to pigeonhole yourself super hard, which obviously that's already been increased pretty significantly with the the modifiers in game, which we are in game, so we can, like the, roll radiant effects and unraveling and volatile for barrier and unstop, has blind, ignition, suspend for strand, obviously has been a huge one, overload, so we have a lot more flexibility normally anyway, but it's definitely nice when there's just an easy, straightforward, like, here's a solid special ammo weapon that you can just stun champions with. So that's super duper nice. Go back to the top. We've got Arc and Strand Siphon combo, Solar and Strand Siphon combo, Void and Strand Siphon combo. Honestly, none of these are overly intriguing to me. I'm not usually using, like, a Strand weapon at all, to be honest, but I'm usually definitely not running a Strand weapon and then, like, specifically of one of these other ones, and then like specifically also wanting the combo of the siphons. But who knows, maybe new weapons come in and that ends up being useful, and there's all three of the possible options. Obviously stasis is not in here, and kinetic weapons are not in here, but maybe, possibly, it's there, it's flexible. We got origin perk specialization. Greatly improves the benefits provided by the Head Rush, Nanotech Trace Rockets, Unsated Hunger, and Redacted. I feel like this might be the raid origin trait. I don't know why else they would redact it, because this is also new, Head Rush, but they put it in there. So I feel like this is... I'd be willing to bet this is the raid origin trait, and I'd be willing to bet it is named something that would give away what the raid is. That's just my guess. But we'll have to see what some of these new ones are. Usually this origin perk specialization hasn't never been super exciting for me, but it's an option. This one I'm actually interested. Diviner's discount. All scavenger mods are discounted. That's going to be pretty nice. Allow you to get those on your boots. I guess the only thing with that is obviously scavenger mods are, again, on your boots, and you have to then give up surges and or recuperation, and I really like usually running 2 surge and a recuperation, or maybe even 3 surge for DPS. So if you can fit it in there, if you're not caring as much about the surge, maybe if you're not going straight DPS, or you can, be sweaty and hot swap mid encounters and stuff like that, could help things out a little bit. Usually when they discount stuff, it ends up being like 1 energy, so it'll most likely be pretty cheap to fit in, so that'll be nice. All right, so third row, we've got Strand Weapon Final Blows have a chance to generate a Tangle. Sweet, more Tangles. Origin Perk Specialization 2. This one's actually kind of interesting a lot of times because it gives you that overcharge, right? So this gives you more flexibility in terms of getting that 25% damage buff in content where overcharge exists. And again, obviously the new raid is coming, at least from my perspective, the new raid's coming out next season. Again, we don't know what this is, and we don't know what this is, but if there's any solid DPS options within there, and we're doing like master stuff. I'm pretty sure overcharge exists in master. I should probably check that here really quick. Um, but that means you don't have to worry about like the surge or anything of the raid. You can just use that weapon with an origin trait that is one of these, and you get that bonus because you can't stack the surge. You can't stack with that overcharge. So if you have one or the other, it gives you a little extra flexibility. Let me actually quickly check that I'm not crazy and the overcharge weapons exist in master. Actually, I'm like 99% sure that's a thing. Where is master? There, this raid. Like 99.9% sure that's a thing. Yes, overcharge. So overcharge is there, and then I think it shows like somewhere else. Is it overcharge? Yeah, here we go. Overcharge weapons. So yeah, any master raid should have that same thing. All right, and so now this is where the interesting stuff comes in. We've got Elemental Orbs Void, Elemental Orbs Arc, and Elemental Orbs Solar. And all of these are going to be, you have to be using that subclass, Void, Arc, or Solar. And Weapon Final Blows of that same type are going to have a chance to spawn Elemental Orbs, and then those can be thrown to do things. Basically, Void is Volatile, Arc is Jolt, and Solar is Scorch. It's their main subclass type thing, debuff thing that they do. And I'm gonna assume, obviously we don't know this, but I'm gonna assume that this is gonna be similar to Tangles. I'm assuming they're literally probably gonna look like Tangles, but be like purple and blue and orange. And I'm also gonna assume their cooldowns are gonna be about the same, if not literally the same. And if that's the case, I'm interested for sure. Like, I'm not sure if Scorch is gonna do a whole lot personally. But Jolt and Volatile, I could see those being quite interesting. It's also very dependent. Like, Scorch could be good if these orbs are just good in general. Like, if they're like OG Warmind Cell damage, even if they're, I don't expect them to be like as big of explosions at all for sure. But like, if the damage of the orb itself when it explodes is good, then obviously any of the three will be good. But I'm expecting them more to be for the debuff, maybe okay damage, but more for the debuffs. And I'm very intrigued, definitely, for the Arc and the Void ones, especially. All right, let's go. Keep talking. So Overload Machine Gun, we kind of briefly touched on that earlier, saw it in the note that it exists. Obviously, Overload Machine Gun's always a nice one. Same with like having special ammo weapons that can stun, having heavy ammo weapons that can stun. Awesome. So I mean, you could run a pretty flexible loadout of like a auto rifle or a bow with a fusion and a machine gun without even having to worry about exotics or your subclass and deal with all three champion types. Simple. Like, again, obviously if you throw in exotics, you have a lot of flexibility there. If you throw in subclass verbs, you have a lot of flexibility there. But like having all of that possibility is really, really nice. Obviously, also Thunderlord normally has Overload Machine Gun, but being able to do this with non-exotics, again, increases your flexibility a lot. Allows you to use something like Wish Ender, although it's already bow barrier. But Wish Ender, I feel like is a little stronger. Something like Arbalist, something like, I guess, Bastion, or, gives you room for exotics. Or Vex, again, with Unstoppable Fusion existing. A lot of flexibility on champions this season, on top of already having more flexibility because of all the subclass verbs that we've added. So exciting there. More champion stuff. While stunned, champions take bonus damage from your abilities and elemental orb damage. Honestly, I don't think this is going to be very good. It's just the abilities and elemental orb damage. I don't see these being super high uptime, and I don't see them being necessarily meant for their damage exactly. And I mean, abilities are pretty high uptime, but like if I think this is one where if there are going to be champions and you have an extra slot to have an unlock, sure, but I don't think it's like a must have type of thing. Obviously the one thing I would say about this is like old artifacts when they were all able to be unlocked and like you unlocked it and like put it in your armor and it costed points, I would probably never use this. But with the changes on how it is now, when you do have to do multiple unlocks, I can see it because like if you're not using an overload machine gun, obviously you're not going to use this one, and so like we'll go down and see some other ones. But again, this one's a it's an option, but I don't think it's like a you're building your entire like world around it option. So this is the mod we were talking about from the beginning, right? With war mine cells and tangles and stuff. If other people are stealing your mod, you're stealing your tangle, stealing your war mine cells. You're sad, right? This is actually like super big brain potential potential for this. So when an ally destroys or picks up your Tangle or Elemental Orb, the Tangle cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds, which I assume this also means this is meant to say Tangle or Elemental Orb as well. Or maybe there just isn't a cooldown on Elemental Orbs, would that be weird? And you gain bonus damage with weapons matching your subclass for 10 seconds. So going into the whole idea of elemental synergy, right? You're going to want to run, like, you want elemental synergy these days anyway because of surges and because of siphons and because of reload and like everything. The more synergy you can have, the better. And especially if you're synergizing with any sort of surge from the activity, getting that bonus 25% damage, even better, of course. And on top of that, you've got, again, these elemental orbs for either solar, void, or arc, where you want to run that same subclass type, that same weapon type, so you can make the elemental orbs. And then, obviously, you'll also be able to get this benefit if you're doing that, if somebody else destroys or picks up your orbs. And now the caveat to all of this is assuming, like, this is going to be good for sure. Like, it's for sure good to me, 100% of the time. The thing is A, you need somebody else to do this for you. So it's a little bit like, again, teamwork oriented, which I like. I think that's really cool, but definitely not as easy to pull off as some things maybe. The second thing is, like, again, my brain goes straight to raids. And will this stack with well? Will this stack with bubble? Stuff like that. Like, if it does, that's, again, a very interesting sort of interaction to be able to incorporate into maxing out DPS for things. And again, also obviously the third thing is how much bonus damage does this give? I would assume 10%, maybe 15-ish. But it doesn't say, we don't know. But I think at the very least, this is a very good mod. I think if used to its absolute topmost advantage, and assuming it stacks with other things, this will be one of those defining mods of the season. Next, we've got refreshing pickups. Picking up a Tingle or Elemental Orb grants energy to your least powered ability. Again, this is one where, like, if I'm not using Overload Machine Gun, and maybe if there's, like, not champions, or if this ends up not being super useful, or if I just happen to have another unlock that I need to use somewhere, I'd put this in there. I don't think it's going to be mind-blowingly outstanding, but I think it'll be consistently useful at the very least. Like, if you don't, or if you're someone that, like, doesn't want to worry about, like, changing your artifact constantly, like, this will always be useful, right? Like, in every single activity, assuming you're doing something with elemental orbs and stuff, this will, or tangles, you'll always get value out of this versus, like, one of these two, the Overload Machine Gun or the Champions thing. Like, you'd have to change your artifact constantly if you're not doing champion content, if you want to consistently have value from your artifact. So again, I think this is useful. It's nothing mind-blowing, but cool. And semi-auto striker, if you have fewer than 2 stacks of armor charge, rapid precision shots with bows, snipers, and scout rifles generate an armor charge. Again, not mind-blowing to me, especially like how easy armor charge is to come by with orbs and orb generation. Like, I don't think this is, honestly, I think it's pretty in my opinion. It is rapid precision shots, not rapid precision kills. Keep that in mind, because if it was kills, then it would really just be. But yeah, like, again, I think this is pretty meh, Yeah, final row. These are the mods that are, like, usually build defining. Again, the key with the final row, right, is you can only ever unlock 2 of them. And assuming no changes, they didn't mention any sort of changes. I assume it'll be the same. You have to get, I believe, 10 to get to this row, and then you have 12 total unlocks, so you can make 2 of these. No matter what you do at any given time, you can unlock 2. Obviously, you can change them when you want to, but you can only have 2 at the same time. So that's something we want to remember when we're talking about these. So first one, to me, is one of the most interesting ones, again, from a raid mindset, Monochromatic Maestro. I know this mod existed I don't know if it existed in the same way, but I know this existed, like this name existed. And I remember the season, I never really used it super often because again, that whole two mods thing, I feel like I didn't I don't remember using. I just remember this existing and thinking it was probably decent, but I just like couldn't fit it in things. But dealing elemental ability damage increases your matching weapon damage, and elemental weapon damage increases your matching ability damage. And it actually tells us the bonus. Wow, that's crazy. 10% for 5 seconds. So again, to me, I mean, this is pretty just free good. Like I think. Where it becomes potentially maybe not nutty, but like kind of nutty because it's just free 10%. Is again if this stacks with like well tether or like well plus debuff. I don't know if it does. Rapid fire ranger, rapid precision hits made from long range weaken the target. This is kind of like what was that mod from way back in the day? There was a mod that sounds very similar to this that we had a long time ago. Um, and at that time, and this is actually interesting to talk about because of this mod existing before. This isn't the same name, but it looks like it affects things similarly, because at that I remember that stacked with other debuffs. Now that being said, I would be humongously surprised if this did, because it specifically says weaken, and at some point they had like refactored everything and made every single buff and debuff for the most part like into different roles and caveats and things. And weaken specifically is a 15% debuff that applies on a lot of different void subclass things. So if this is indeed a weaken effect, I would assume this will not stack in any way, shape, or form with other debuffs that are also a weaken effect, or tractor or tether that do more than that. But if it for somehow reason stacks, great. Otherwise, probably not super great. I mean, the one thing I will say again, maybe GM, like a GM setting, if you're running like Scout or Bow or like Arbalist or Wishender, or I mean, pretty much a lot of builds in GMs were probably going to play a little bit longer range. Then being able to consistently weaken targets or like a boss, and without having to like debuff, then is super good for something like that. For any sort of like DPS setting, no. Again, unless somehow it stacks, but I don't think it will. But next mod, Elemental Embrace. Subclass elemental buffs grant you bonus recovery and damage resistance against combatants' attacks of this matching element type. This is one I don't even want to begin to assess if this will be good or not. Like, damage resistance is, to me, one of the most important and strongest things you can ever get in the game, by far. Like, being alive is the most important thing in Destiny, as much as that may be wild to hear. Like, if you are dead, you are doing no damage. If you are dead, you are killing nothing. If you are dead, you are doing nothing. Like, being alive is very, very useful. That being said, I don't really fully understand what this means. I'm not gonna lie. I'm assuming this is like if you get like Devour procced, or like Speedy Boost Arc Boy procced, or like Radiant procced or something, then you'll have, like Devour, you have Void resistance or Arc resistance, or Solar for that. And that's if that's the case, the uptime could be good in some cases, could be great in some cases, could be less so in others. It is a very niche option in terms of like, then you have to be thinking about like what the enemy damage type is on top of your damage type with like elemental orbs and stuff like that. So it's very specific, like very specific, and this also assumes it like will stack above 100 resilience and things like that, which I assume it will. That I would assume, yes. But maybe. Like it's gonna depend. Like right now, for these three mods, right? Like we haven't looked at the last two, but like if this doesn't stack for like a DPS raid setting, and assuming this doesn't stack, and again I don't think it will, then honestly, this just being alive at all in any situation like this could just be free like flexibility survival tool. Like Maybe. Like I honestly I don't know. Like this is one that's very. I think this is going to be great or useless. I think this is going to be great or useless. I don't really see a middle ground. Next mod, we got two mods left. Elemental munitions, combatant final blows with tangles or elemental orbs have a chance to drop special or heavy ammo. We love ammo. Ammo's great, outstanding. And we love when mods in the seasonal artifact give us heavy. Now the problem with this mod is it is like so useless, and the mod's not useless. The text here is useless. Like chance, what does that mean? Like I remember back when taken armaments existed, and for a while I was like, oh, that's not going to be very good, like because the text said a chance when on a grenade kill for heavy. That's what it said specifically, because I was like, oh, a chance on a grenade kill, your grenade, like like your grenade's not up that often, and it's like only sometimes you're going to get ammo, like whatever. Now the problem with that was it was guaranteed. The chance was 100%. So like again, like if this chance means 100% or like close to 100% or very likely, then obviously outstanding. Now on top of that, on top of the chance, it says special or heavy. So like how often am I getting special? How often am I getting heavy? Am I gonna get both sometimes? Can I get both? Will I get both? Maybe I'm guaranteed to get both. Like this is so useless text wise to tell me what this like is or doing. Again, I think it'll probably be good. Hopefully it's good. I love I love when we have a heavy ammo ways to get guaranteed heavy from seasonal artifact are big pog seasons, 100%. Obviously we have a couple new ways. At least as a warlock, obviously we have aeons. But the anvil helmet, as I love to call it, my controller's dead and I don't know how to get into my inventory now. How do I open my character on mouse and keyboard? There we go. Anvil helmet, what's it called? Cenotaph mask, also useful, but then you need a trace rifle and you don't make yourself special. So I guess the other question, and I don't think it's going to tell us in the text here either, um, is it just for you? Because it doesn't specify for like you and your team or like your teammates. So that's another thing. Like if it only gives it to like the person that's using this mod and specifically like using the tangle in the orb, a lot less flexible, a lot less good than some of the old ones too. So there's a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions with this mod, but I think unless it's just terrible, I think it's at least again, it's going to depend. We have two mods that we can use, right? We have two of these five mods, which we haven't seen the last one yet, that we can use at a given time. So it's tough. Like again, if this one ends up being good, and if this one ends up being good, like in a raid, like if this stacks in a boss DPS, and if this stacks and is like reasonable uptime, like I don't see me like I don't think I can ever use this. Like again, going back to opportunity cost, like I think the opportunity cost of this one and this one is probably too good. Or I mean, like if you wanted to really be sweaty, like we're talking next level, big brain, hella sweats, is you start with these two, right? For the beginning of the encounter, I'm highlighting everything, but you start with the ammo, you start with the resilience for like I'm thinking like planets here, like a planets type encounter in terms of timing. And so now you're getting ammo during the add clear phase, you're getting resilience and damage reduction during the add clear phase, and then for the actual DPS, if there's at least a little bit of downtime in an encounter before the DPS starts, quickly go to your inventory, you press, remove this mod, probably this one, put this one on real quick when the DPS starts. I guarantee you, if all these mods end up being useful, I 100% guarantee people are going to do that. I guarantee I will probably do that for Master. Like that is very big. Like that'll 100% be a strat that I will use for Master if all those mods are worth using in the ways, like if they're all at their like highest end usefulness out of the text that we can decipher. Let's get to the final mod. Final mod, Frenzied Stacks. Your armor charges grant bonus damage to your thrown tangles or elemental orbs. Your armor charge now decays over time. I see almost 0% that I will ever use this, to be honest. Like, again, if our elemental orb cooldown is like nothing, and we can use these, and they're just constantly spawning, and I'm using these pretty much as if they're a weapon, and this bonus damage is pretty significant, maybe, but like I see I'm gonna give it like a 0.01%, realistically like a 0.75%, like a 1% chance that I will use this ever, let alone like consistently. I think this is pretty almost for sure going to be the worst of these 5 mods. Again, like some of these other ones are potentially only specific use cases and whatever else, but I don't personally see almost any situation in which this is going to be useful. But again, maybe these elemental orbs are just like mind blowing, or this damage bonus is just mind blowing. And if that's the case, or like if there's the case of like the other, like there, you just don't have a use for the other 4 like at all, like this doesn't stack and you're not far enough for this, or you already have debuffs, or like, and this just ends up not being good for some reason, and like this is also not good for some reason, like again, like I feel like the chances of that happening is pretty low. But if you have no other mod that you're gonna make use of, then maybe, I guess. But I just don't think it's very good, personally. So that's all for our first look at Season 22's artifact mods. I hope you enjoyed our first look at these mods and some of my thoughts, and maybe even came up with some thoughts for yourself. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.